Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Apparently some of you have seen them too. People wonder what it takes to kill them. White ash-coated bullets are a favorite, but from my findings, they probably aren't necessary. Why? Because a little over 2 years ago, I had a run-in with one of them. I thought maybe I was crazy until I ran across one of these threads on /k/. Anyways, Greentext time. Around 2 years ago, I was a moody, cynical 18-year-old. Live on a small farm, pretty close to 2 cities. Walking out late one evening, checking on our electric fence, I get a sudden chill on my neck. Feel like something's watching me aside from our cows. Look behind me to see what looks like Smeagol staring at me about 30 meters away. I tried shouting at it, but failed the first time because I was literally speechless. Second time, I managed a weaker, "Hey, get out of here." All I had for defense was a buck 110 that I had gotten the previous Christmas. So I take it out and start moving towards our cows. Thing doesn't seem happy about it. Starts hissing and moving towards me. I thought, this is how I die. It took a running leap at me. I managed to mostly dodge it, but it managed to leave a couple of deep claw marks on my wrist. I lost the knife when I tried to recover from my failed evasive maneuver. Thing is pissed now, if it wasn't before. I should probably take a moment now to explain why what happened next happened. Our cows aren't the dumb chick-filler ones. They're Scottish Highlanders. I've seen them kill large dogs, and I heard from another farmer that they've killed black bears. Pick semi-related. Anyways, that feeling. When one of the mama cows comes rushing in and just blindsides the little bastard, it seriously messed the little creature up. Thing scrabbles off, shrieking. So I go inside to clean up, and lo and behold, my mom's just got home from the store. She thinks since I'm not outgoing and bubbly like her, I'm depressed. Maybe I am, but I'm not self-terminational. So she forces me to go to the ER. They clean me up and send me off to a psych ward. I decide to play dumb, because if I say I got my wrist cut from some evil golem creature that looked twice as evil, they'll lock me up for schizophrenia or worse, rather than just plain old depression self-termination attempt. I roll with it, get voluntarily committed, stick with the story that I did it because of some BS about a family member being close to death, and get out as soon as they finish whatever paperwork. I had been seeing the thing again, usually under moonlight. It doesn't want to come close to any light, it seems. I do a little Googling, see that it's supposedly an urban legend, hear that white ash is supposed to aid in dispatching them. Crunchtime.png. I knew from the first encounter that it was damageable without white ash. How much so, I didn't know. So I get out my .270 Remington Model 700 deer rifle, loaded up with some zippy hand loads that we use for deer. They break shoulders and other large bones if they hit them, so it ought to mess the thing up some. Leave them there until I see it again. Next night. See it out there again, but it vanishes before I can grab the gun. So I load it up so I can have it ready. Almost got busted for leaving a gun loaded, but managed to keep it as is. Next evening. Getting dark. Deer comes bounding from inner woods, jumps the fence but knocks off 2 wires. Fuck me.jpg. I grab my maglite. Fancy bright beam tactical one that's supposedly able to dazzle blind people temporarily if they get it in the eyes. Grab the rifle, also decide to grab a .22 Ruger pistol. Figure that at close range it'll do a little damage, and a deer rifle really isn't meant for in-your-face fighting. Loaded up with 6 rounds, all I could wrangle on short notice. It's at this point I have another revelation. Why should I go onto the walker's turf, when I've got a rifle that'll mess it up without me having to get to mano-a-mano range? Still sorta light. Take the pistol and the maglite and hurry out to fix the fence before it goes all dark. It starts raining, sorta turns the ground to mud, but it softens the manure smell some. Finish up. Start power walking back towards the relative safety of our house. Chills.wave. It's back again. Smells something like burnt copper or something like that. It's back.jpg. Flip on the maglite, pull out the pistol and shout at it. Stay away. I swear that thing grins at me. It repeats stay away, except in an eerie voice, safetyoff.gif. It's moving towards me, but hesitantly because it seems to dislike the light. I aim at its eye, squeeze the trigger like I was taught. Kaboom! Ears ringing, thing is screeching and rolling on the ground. Discouraged it, but it doesn't seem too wounded. Begin backing away again. Thing stops flailing and starts trying to flank me. Kaboom! Cue more screeching. Probably missed it because it was moving. It mad.png. Get more nervous now. I've used 2 of my 6 shots, and the nearest ammo is my rifle in our garage. Thing dodges behind a tree. Disappears. Oh shit. I turn and run towards where I can get outside the fence. Almost make it when I hear that unearthly screech again. I whip around, hit it with the mag light, and snap off another shot at it. Kaboom. Missed. It gets this evil look on its face and jumps at me. I swear to God, this thing jumps at me from 30 feet away. I punch it in the side of the head with the mag light, knock it off balance. It swipes at me. Gun goes off. Kaboom! Don't know where that one went. All I know is I've got 2 shots left. I kick it away from me. As it gets back up, I give it a nice steel toe in the face. Flips the bastard backwards. It screeches again. Here's something that sounds like muffled rainfall, but lower. Sorta like thunder, but it's growing. Thing jumps me again during my momentary distraction. Hit the gun again. Kaboom! Drop the gun. Worst feeling ever. Grappling with the monster, it's stronger than me, but not by much. It flips me over, but I get a chokehold around its neck. It screeches again, loudest yet. Tries to break my hold. Not today, motherfucker. I shift into a throw. Put that little demon into the side of a tree. It tries to get back up and growls at me. Screeches, but this time stay away. Too late for that. Punch it in the side of the head. It goes stay away and jumps away. Starts circling me in a dark. Can't take my eyes off it. Try feeling around for the gun. Suddenly, moo.mp3. It's the oldest cow in our herd. Horns like your stereotypical Looney Tunes bull. Comes out of the dark behind the thing. Literally seems to spit it on a horn. Tosses it with a head whip, and before it can get back up, is over stomping on it with her forehooves. Rolls it with her horns, rams it against the ground. It's screeching, trying to escape. But Mama Cow again playing tonight. She kept on attacking it until it stopped moving and screeching. My face when one of our cows killed a skinwalker. I pick up the mag light, walk over to the cow. Thing looks sort of like the pictures I've now seen, and sort of like Gollum. It's evil looking. I kind of wonder now if it was a demon. Its head is barely attached to the body now. I stared for a little bit, then looked at the cow now just standing there with her patented doe-eyed look. Look at the body once more. See 2 bullet holes, one in its chest region, the other in the forehead. Forehead didn't penetrate. Bullet is embedded in the surface. Chest it went in, don't know how much. Realized that my leg and torso hurt like fury. I've got blood running down from bullet holes. Well, whoop-de-flippin'-do. I take a quick look around for the gun, find it, start walking out. Gotta get the blood flow stopped, or else. Everything after that was a little disjointed. The cops showed up because someone heard screaming and shots. Didn't say anything to anyone except my one friend who showed up at ER. He thinks it was just the morphine talking. If I tell a soul now, they'll either chalk it up to my imagination or another mental illness. But hey, when I got out a week later, I got home and found a rotting carcass. At that point, it wasn't very discernible and looked like a smaller rotted bear carcass or a large coyote. Now, I'm willing to accept it might have been a mangy timber wolf or a starving mangy bear. But it was scary for sure. And I'd say it was speaking. Regardless, one of our cows killed one of whatever it was. Pick related. My leg after it happened.
Be off in a woods May of last year. In California, western Sierra Nevada range on the south end of the John Muir Wilderness. We had weirder weather than usual, so it's warm, and I decided to not bring a tent, just a cot and a sleeping bag. Using the bag as a blanket. Something woke me up. Kinda drowsy peer out of my sleeping bag. Shadowy figure off to the west. The moon was setting behind it, so I know it was west. Panic and roll off the cot. Rock to the face, I now am awake. Stand up and look back at it. Shadowy guy is now walking towards me. Moving like an 80s B-movie stop-motion film. Was sleeping with my jacket on, have sheath knife declipped to it. Pull a knife, kinda get ready to stab someone. Kinda tripping out, every creepypasta ever now in my mind. Shaking a little. I will shank you. Noise to my right. The shadow dude stops and looks. I look. Suddenly a cow. Cow moos. Louder compared to everything else, since it had been more or less silent. Shadow Dude drops onto all fours and Spider walks backwards away from the cow making a screed noise. Back on my cot now, warily looking around. WTF the rest of the night. Cow wanders around my cot all night munching on grass occasionally. Pack my gear up and hike out the moment I have enough light to not to run face first into a tree. Probably will be camping in that area again once I finish up my AR-10.308 Winchester hollow points wax capped with lye and white ash mixed with mercury should do the trick if all the stories hold true. Well, it's what I'd use on a bloodsucker anyway.
Hey/X/, I've got something that's happened to me recently that I wanted to share. I work for a larger farm in the northeastern U.S. My parents own a small farm, so I know firsthand how different things can be on both. For example, if your big farm has enough workers, you can get sick days, which is what I had to take 3 days ago. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. It was how I think I got sick that is more interesting. I'm in charge of rounding up the pastured animals in the A group for milking in the mornings and evenings. It was really nice out, even for 5 in the morning, and the sun was just rising. Most cows sleep together out in the open. Some go hiding in the forest, where it's hard to take my four-wheeler, which is what I saw a group of them doing. So, it was by foot and into the underbrush I went, and that was where things went wrong. I had dismounted right where I could see the cows, and only had to make a few turns and dips in deer paths to get to the lazy ones. I get to the group of 4 and rouse them and chase them out of the woods. One of them is a big old girl who bullies people because she's bigger and knows she's better than you, so she took a swing with her head at me a few times. Cue my calling her an ugly old witch, and she's lucky she was pregnant, or else I would sell her personally. She completely ignores me and ambles off with the rest of her little posse to the larger stream of animals heading down through the pasture. At this moment, I'm not too worried about heading out after them since I'm one of 5 people that herds the animals. I was caught on a patch of brambles and trying to get free when this eerie, piercing squeal came up from further in the forest. Just thinking about it gives me the chills. It sounded kind of like a deer screaming, but it was way too loud. I was standing there, caught in a thorn patch, waiting for it to happen again, when I heard this strange shuffling to my right. I really don't know what it was. It looked vaguely like a naked human, arms, legs, torso, but they were all way too long and thin. Its arms and legs all bowed out. It was walking towards me, backwards, with these really horribly jerky movements. It seemed to try to be looking at me over its shoulder, and all I could see were these bulbous yellow eyes. And teeth, these awful, needle-like teeth. Nope.jpg. Screw the brambles, screw everything. I scramble the hell out, proceeding to shred my flesh and clothes in the process. I hear this massive crashing, but at that point was too terrified to look to see if it was the abomination or not. My four-wheeler was still there and running by some miracle, but was facing the direction of the woods, which I wasn't sure I had done. I jumped on, which made me face the woods again. The thing was nowhere in sight, but I didn't stop to really examine the brush line. I turned around in a tight circle and got out of there. When I finally got down into the main pasture, the tail end of the line was heading into the barn, and 3 of the other herders were at the bottom, chatting. They all looked up when they saw me driving up. One of them raised his arms in a "what the hell happened" gesture, but I didn't give him time to speak before I had jumped off and was talking to them. I told them everything that had happened and what I'd seen, not even stopping to think they might think I was crazy. They all looked a little uncomfortable, and not just a little scared, but because of how scared I was, they didn't think I was lying. And probably how I kept looking over my shoulder to see if the thing had finally made its way out of the woods or not. One of the guys called the herdsman, the guy that's in charge of the cows, and told him there was a situation in the A group. Nothing terribly specific, just I'd seen an unsub in the woods, and it looked more dangerous to people than cows. I got reassigned to milking to finish my shift, so I didn't have to go back out, and everyone considered that to be the end of that. Except it wasn't. As I was helping prep for milking, I started feeling shaky and chilly. I figured I was just coming down from an adrenaline high, but as milking progressed, this was clearly not the case. Several of the milkers commented on how pale I was and were alarmed at the scratches on my arms and face. It looked like an animal had attacked me. I told them I had only got caught in some thorns before one of them took a picture of me with her phone and showed me what I looked like. It really did look like an animal had attacked me. I'm talking claw marks, on my neck, on my arms. I even had a black eye I had no idea I'd even had. Needless to say, this freaked me out pretty badly, to the point where one of the milkers called the herdsman and told me to go to the office so I could check out and go home. Nobody really wanted me to be on my own, so one of the milkers walked me over from the milking parlor to the office, which was like 50 feet away, but I was still glad for the company. Being outside made me start looking for the thing again. The herdsman was in the office, along with my boyfriend, who's the herdsman's nephew. The herdsman is a co-owner of the farm, so he can basically make executive decisions about the shit that goes on, and they'd already decided that my boyfriend would take me home. At this point, I didn't want to be alone a lot more than I wanted to rest, though, so there was some deliberation, and my condition was going rapidly downhill. I was so gone with fever at that point that I couldn't really understand what anyone was saying. All I could hear was this long, drawn-out scraping, like something big was rubbing up against the side of the office. I cut into the discussion, asking if a cow was lost, because I thought I could hear one outside. This got me a funny look, but my boyfriend went to one of the windows to look outside. Apparently, there was something out there, but it was human rather than animal, and they were standing in the gravel driveway. My boyfriend had said hello and can I help you to the person, and had turned to go to the door so he could speak more normally to the person. The conversation went something like, "What can I do for you?" Silence. "Is there anything we can help you with?" Silence. "All right, if you need anything, you let us know." Silence. He and the herdsman had another short deliberation about who was outside and why they were so weird. The herdsman went to talk to the guy, and my boyfriend turned back to me to get up out of the office's couch so I could go home. Well, he's gone. Both my boyfriend and I were WTFing. How could the guy be just gone? My boyfriend decided I would ride in a tractor with him for the next 7 hours instead of go home, which I heartily endorsed. His other option was that I go to the doctor's, which we fought about and I eventually won. I really didn't want to be alone and possibly run up against the guy. I hadn't taken into consideration that the fields my boyfriend was working in were surrounded by woods, however. I spent most of the entire time staring at them, waiting for something to come out. It was only around 8:30 when my boyfriend finally decided he was done with work and parking that I did see something. Way off on the other side of the field he'd been working, I saw something standing between the trees. It was definitely a person, but they just kept standing there, motionless. It felt like they were staring at me, just like I was staring at them. I went home and had to be taken to the doctor in the middle of the night. My fever was too high and I wasn't getting better. That was 5 days ago. I'm feeling marginally better now, but I'm still sick and exhausted.
Probably a squirrel, you big wuss. Did you go back with fire and steel and slay the fell beast?
Well, worst squirrel ever. But no, sadly I haven't even worked up enough courage to look out the window this morning to check the tree line to see if the fucker is there. Every now and again I'll think I see someone standing in the trees or something. Since I saw whatever I saw, some weird shit has happened on the farm. The office came up trashed one morning like a wild animal had gone through it. Nothing valuable was taken, and the foodstuffs in it was strewn around. Also, there were a few bloody smears in high places that looked like handprints, which is probably what persuaded the owners to call the police. Some of the workers have been complaining about seeing a stranger hanging around the farm, but no two people agree on what he looks like. Some people who live close to the farm have even said they've seen the stranger following them home, but was easily frightened away with the threat of bodily harm. One of the guys has said he thought he saw an animal out on his porch the other night. He said he saw its eyes reflecting in the field and decided he wouldn't bother it until it got up to the door. Which was when he opened the door and greeted said animal with a face full of shotgun. He's probably 60 or so, and a ballsy old coot. He said it looked like a coy dog, except bigger than any he's ever seen. No one's reported seeing the thing I saw initially, but then who would, really?
11 or 12 years old, around 1999. Easter evening, at Grandpa's house. Family pictures are over. Outside with my little brother, 6-ish, playing with a camera. Take a picture of my brother. See something big and black moving over his shoulder down the road. Zoom in camera. It's big, vaguely canine, and walking on 2 legs. Long pointy ears and snout. Snout looks alligator-like, moving in this weird jerky manner. Reminds me of those old stop-motion films. Drop camera, feel a cold weight in the bottom of my stomach. My little brother is confused by my facial expression. Turns around and sees it. He screams in terror. Thing stops for a second. Cocks its head. Mouth opens for a second, see a long-ass tongue. The door to the house flies open. Grandpa is running out to see what's wrong. Thing snaps out of it. Starts sprinting towards the fence across the road. Grabs onto it with its bottom legs crossed over it really weird. Bounds off into the brush. Grandpa arrives, asks what happened. Notice he's unholstered his handgun. The rest of the family gets outside. Describe what we saw in tears to our family. Aunt says,
"Oh, it must have been a black bear or German shepherd."
Grandpa is looking at me funny. Doesn't say anything, but looks like he knows something. We leave shortly afterward. My grandpa refused to talk about that shit. My brother remembers it, but he freaks out and changes the subject if it comes up. Fence was messed up where it grabbed onto it last time I went back around 2009-ish. A friend of my grandpa's from that area once slipped something while drunk about seeing a giant black thing gnawing on a cow and dragging it into the brush when he was a teenager, but that's all else I've ever heard. Pic of what it looked like compared to the fence, and a rough diagram of the area of the sighting. Black bar is the thing, and the orange trail its approximate path.
Be me. About 10 years old, I live in a rural area, and my neighbors are cow fields. It's about 10 o'clock at night, I'm getting ready for bed. As I'm getting ready, I notice there's no bug noises outside. Think that's weird as I live in Louisiana and there's always bugs. Always. Decide to peek out the window. Look out the window and there's a man staring right at me. Look into his eyes for what feels like hours, unable to scream or look away. This man wasn't a normal man. His face looked like he had been burned and that it didn't heal right. It was just this lumpy, stretched out mess, and he was smiling at me. Finally, the spell was broken and I screamed. Dad ran outside looking for this man, found no trace, only foot impressions on the grass.
Let me set the scene. My grandma's property set about 2 miles down the road from her house way out in the country. That's where you enter the first gate by the road. To start up the extremely narrow dirt road up the mountain, it kind of winds up the side of the mountain until you get to the top, about a 15-minute drive. At the top, it's all fenced in. It's a big area with a field at the very bottom. It's on top of a mountain, so it slopes up. That field is fenced in with a wooden fence. The trees outline the field at the bottom of it, and they are very thick and covered in bush. On the far right side, there is a corral and very old barn. Up from the field is kind of an open logged area where the road comes through, a block foundation where my grandpa had begun to build another cabin, and a really shitty cabin. It was all one room and made of plywood or something. It had one window in the very front, facing away from the field, looking toward the top of the mountain, where there was thin forest. The mountain apexed here, and the fence went on down the hill until it stopped and became thick brush forest, like the bottom of the field on the other side. It was an extremely large fenced area, and the thin forest stretched on forever. You couldn't see one side of the fence from the other in any direction. I'm just guessing, but I'd say 50 acres or more of mountaintop. They kept it to keep their cows in the pasture field area, which was large but surrounded by trees and a wooden fence. It was surrounded by trees in the form of a G, and the little circle inside the G was sort of a sinkhole that you couldn't see from the main dirt road. Now that you have an idea of how the area looked, I'll get on with what I have to say. My grandpa died of lung cancer. My grandma, as hard-working as she is really small and able to only tend her yard and garden. So someone had to feed the cows and check on them. I usually drove down after work, checked on her, and then drove up there, grabbed some feed from the barn, and fed the cows. One night I got off work a little late and it was getting dark, so I drove straight up to the mountain. When I got to the top to get out and open the gate into the area, I heard a cow mooing really loud. I didn't think anything of it since they usually did this, but this was really loud and sounded off. When I pulled up to the pasture, the cows were nowhere to be seen, which was weird because they usually came hauling ass when they heard me coming. I put the feed in the trough and hollered for them, but they didn't come. I figured they were just in the non-visible area of the field, remember the G shape, but I had to go check. I went to my truck and grabbed a flashlight since it was getting dark and it was a large field. As I walked down to where I thought they were, I kept hearing that loud moo that sounded weird coming from different directions, but it didn't deter my path since I was sure they were in that part of the field. I rounded the corner and down in the sinkhole they were all standing there, huddled up quite. As I walked up to them, I tried to shoo them to the barn, but they wouldn't budge, and that's when I heard another moo from the woods at the top of the sinkhole. I thought one had gotten out of the fence and was in distress. I wasn't really freaked out at this point, so I decided to investigate and retrieve the cow. I didn't do a head count because I didn't really know how many they had. So I walked up the hill of the sinkhole where I thought the moo came from. But around the time I got to the top, I heard it again coming from another side of the field. I walked over, hopped the fence, and shined my light through the dense woods. I was shaky from being in the woods during the dark, but not really scared. I walked back a bit in the woods and saw it, the cow standing in a little clearing facing away from me. Black and white, it looked like a cow, but it was sitting down like a dog and looked sickly. You've seen a cow that was skinny. I thought it might have hurt its back legs or something, so I strolled up to it, then noticed something as I got closer. Its hooves weren't hooves. It had hands on its front legs, long, thin fingers with fleshy, brittle-looking fingernails. Not being able to explain what I had saw, I called out to it in hopes it was just the dark messing with me. Suis café come eat. At that point, about 20 yards from me in the clearing, the thing stood up on two legs and turned around. Its skin was colored like a black and white cow, but its body was nothing like it. It was tall and thin with a strange flat face, large mouth, and sunken in dark eyes. I hauled ass out of the woods, tripping and stumbling over everything, my heart pumping so hard I couldn't hear anything else. When I got to the fence, I leaped straight over it and sprinted through the field to my truck. I locked the doors, started the truck, and grabbed my .380 compact from the glove box. I backed my truck down most of the thin dirt road until I got to the gate. I turned around on a steep hill, almost flipping my truck, now facing the gate. I looked around my truck with the flashlight. I hurried and got out to unlatch the gate and swing it wide open, and on the short way back to my truck just inside the forest beside me, I hear, "Suis Kaffir, come eat." I got in my truck and scrambled down the mountain without closing the gate. Then after what seemed like 200 meters, I arrived 2 miles away at my grandma's house. I told her everything, and she just sat there calmly and said, "Sounds like a trickster." I took this as her saying it was someone playing a joke on me and angrily left. I learned later that local Indians called shapeshifters, skinwalkers, tricksters. She sold the cows, then the land, and I never returned. Try to pretend it didn't happen. I've saw a ghost before and had a friend with me that also saw this. I don't know what to make of that thing, though. Yeah, what's weird is that the next day I was going back to my grandma's to tell her I wasn't going up there again, obviously, and this blocked her road. It was an hour trip around it, so I went home. This is what the landscape looks like around the place it happened, to give you an idea. It's not looking in the direction of the property at all, though.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.